Such an energetic audience. Are you all excited and ready for this particular panel discussion? Please show some energy. Thank you so much. So to begin with, India is a diverse country, but there are two belief systems prevalent in India. One where Hindus are different from Muslims, who are different from Christians, and one in which we trace all Indians, irrespective of religion, back to Hinduism, and thereby call them Muslim Hindus, Jain Hindus, Christian Hindus, etc. In this great debate, IIMUN has always tried to embrace an idea of India that accepts both unity in diversity as well as diversity in unity, as long as the principal values remain to be with India. However, which according to you is the Indian experiment?
Actually, in today's India, we are living in the context of identity crisis, where all sorts of identities are being talked about, and the issue which you have raised is actually central to the India we are living in, because the problem is that no individual has one identity. There we have multiple identities. So we can be Hindu, Muslim, we can be Indian, we can be Tamil and from Bihari and all sorts of identities. So, but all these identities get merged into an Indian identity, and this is how we have been living in. This is what unity in diversity is called. The problem which I find today is that this heterogeneity, which we all respected all these years, and our nationalism, right from freedom struggle, was based on this composite identity, composite nationalism, where everybody got together and became one. Now, there is an attempt by a section of Indians, political people and otherwise, who are trying to create homogeneity, who don't respect heterogeneity, who actually find problems with heterogeneity. They find heterogeneity as weakness of India, which had been our strength according to me. So the point is, one need to articulate it in a way where the heterogeneity, which has been our strength, remains alive, remains vibrant, and we remain part of it.
Thank you, sir. Your take on the same, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm grateful to the organizers, IIMUN, Parul University, Vadodara Literature Festival, for bringing us here. And you have asked a very pertinent question, a very complex question, but I think the answer is very simple. We all are Indians. हमारी जो एक आइडेंटिटी है वो हमारी एक हिंदुस्तानी की है. हम चाहे जो भी हमारा धर्म हो, आस्था हो, ये सारे निजी मामले होते हैं, और इसमें हम अगर इस तरह से देखेंगे कि देखिए हिंदुस्तान का आप इतिहास देखें, 1000 साल, 2000 साल, 3000 साल, जितना पीछे जाएंगे आपको उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा डाइवर्सिटी नज़र आएगी हर तरीके की. दो चीज़ें जो, और पूरा का पूरा ये प्रश्न जो हैं ये आज उनको मुझे लगता है कि कोई फिर से कुरेदने की या उस पर डिस्कशन करने की, डिबेट करने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि जिन हालात में हमारे देश को स्वतंत्रता मिली, अंग्रेज़ शासक था और उसने फूट डालो की पॉलिसी के तहत एक बंटवारे की बात करी, और वो बंटवारे में बहुत सारी ऐसी बहस आई. आप लोग सब यहाँ युवा हैं, और जो मेरी ये पुस्तक यहाँ पर रखी हुई है, लीडर, पॉलिटिशियन, सिटीजन, जिसमें ऐसे सब बहुत सी चीज़ों का एक मैंने जिक्र किया है. उसमें एक व्यक्ति थे जिनका नाम था मौलाना हुसैन अहमद मदनी, वो जमीयतुल उलमा हिंद के अध्यक्ष थे. तो उनका एक कहना ये था, उन्होंने एक कंपोजिट नेशनलिज्म की थ्योरी की. उन्होंने कहा था कि हिंदू और मुसलमान जो हैं वो एक ही नेशन है, वन नेशन थ्योरी. जैसे जो मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना ने 2 नेशन थ्योरी पैदा की थी, उन्होंने कहा था कि हिंदू और मुसलमान इस देश में साथ में नहीं रह सकते, और वो बहुत गलत है. आज आप देख रहे हैं पाकिस्तान का क्या हाल है कि वो वहाँ की जो उन्होंने मुस्लिम आइडेंटिटी जो है वो बिल्कुल बिखर चुकी है. देश का एक बार विभाजन हो चुका है और फिर वो विभाजन और बिल्कुल टुकड़े टुकड़े हो जाने के करीब है. तो उनका कहना ये था कि जो दो चीज़ें होती हैं जो लोग थोड़ा सा उर्दू हिंदी भाषा से वाकिफ़ होंगे तो वो समझेंगे कि एक होती है एक कौम, तो हम एक कौम हैं, जो हमारा डीएनए है, हमारा खून है, वो यहाँ जितने भी धर्म के लोग रहते हैं सबका एक है। एक और कॉन्सेप्ट होता है मिल्लत का कि कम्युनिटी, वो कम्युनिटी कोई सी भी कम्युनिटी हो सकती है और तमाम कम्युनिटी में इस तरह की डाइवर्सिटी होती है। तो हम एक हैं, एक रहेंगे, एक थे, एक हैं और एक रहेंगे, इस टाइप का हमें बात समझनी चाहिए। तमाम जब भी देश में कोई संकट की बात आती है, कोई होता है, आप देखेंगे कि तमाम लोग साथ इकट्ठा होकर के एकजुट होकर के आगे बढ़ते हैं और साथ में रहते हैं। तो उसको एक पॉलिटिकल एजेंडा ज़रूर हो सकता है, लेकिन सामाजिक स्तर पे, आर्थिक स्तर पे, ज़मीनी स्तर पे आप देखेंगे तो आपको इसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं नज़र आएगा। तो ये जो यूनिटी इन डाइवर्सिटी, ये तो हमारा एक अंग है। देखिए, जो आज भारत में अगर हम जाते हैं कहीं, तमिलनाडु का कोई आदमी होता है, पूर्वोत्तर का व्यक्ति होता है, तो हमें उसकी अलग अलग भाषा है, उसका लिबास अलग है, उसकी खान पान का ढंग अलग है, लेकिन वो अपने आप को एक गर्व के हिसाब से वो कहता है कि वो भारतीय है। तो हमने वी आर इंडियंस बाई चॉइस, नॉट बाई फोर्स। और ये एक ऐसी चीज़ है, जो एक ऐसा अध्याय है जो हमें हमारे अंदर आ चुका है पूरे देश में। और आप देखिएगा कि जहाँ जहाँ भी इस तरह की जो बात कही जाती थी, अलगाववाद वगैरह, वहाँ बदलाव आ रहा है। आज कश्मीर में भी बहुत बदलाव आ गया है। तमिलनाडु में आप जाइए तो हिंदी को लेकर के बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सेप्टेबिलिटी है, पहले प्रॉब्लम थी। नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी बहुत ज़्यादा चेंज आया है। तो एक नेशनल मेन स्ट्रीम, मेन धारा में तमाम लोग शामिल हो गए हैं। और ये हमारा, मुझे लगता है, पिछले 76 साल का जो आज़ादी के बाद की सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि है।
Good afternoon, and first of all, it's really wonderful to be here amongst you all. It's such a young audience, and it reminds me of my own college days and university days, so it's really wonderful. Thank you, IIMUN and Parul University, for organizing this and for inviting me. And, I was thinking about this question, and I really am a pragmatic person, and I look to the future. I don't want to go back to the future. I want to go forward to the future. So what is the future for our country? I think the future of our country will be great. Our country will be strong if we are united. If we are divided along caste or religion or community, I don't think we can be strong. And if you look at our history, every time we were divided and weak, somebody came and exploited that. We become vulnerable. So most important thing is that all our people should be united. और दूसरी चीज़, भारत का जो मैं सोचता हूँ, my conception, my thinking, आप एक गुलदस्ता देखिए, सुंदर गुलदस्ता, तरह तरह के फूल हैं, तरह तरह के रंग हैं, तरह तरह की खुशबुएं हैं। आप ये चाहते हैं कि एकदम मोनोक्रोमैटिक आपका गुलदस्ता हो? Even a white light breaks into 7 colors. And that is the beauty of our country. Imagine, हर जगह आप जा रहे हैं, सब एक ही भाषा बोल रहे हैं, एक ही कपड़े पहन रहे हैं, एक ही cuisine है, एक ही music, dance, everything is the same. So boring it will be. So the great strength of India is its diversity. तो unity in diversity तो है ही, but I feel diversity strengthens our unity and makes it a better, more colorful, more dynamic country. तो इसीलिए मैं ये समझता हूँ कि ये सब चीज़ें जो हमें डिवाइड करती हैं, उनसे हमें ऊपर उठ के आगे का सोचना चाहिए. After all, we don't want to go back into the future, we want to go forward.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful answer. Moving ahead with my next question. A central concept in India has always been Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world. How do we create one world when we constantly try to put down other nations and communities? So how does one account for this idea of nationalism? Is there exclusion taking place in the name of inclusion? What are your thoughts about the same?
I think आप सब लोगों ने देखा होगा, अब G20 का माहौल है पूरे मुल्क में, और जगह जगह, दिल्ली में कम से कम है ही, पोस्टर्स लगे हुए हैं और नीचे उसके वासुदेव कुटुंबकम का इस्तेमाल हो रहा है, जो बहुत अच्छा लगता है। और हमारा पुराना एंशिएंट कंसेप्ट है, उसमें कोई क्वेश्चन उसको कर नहीं सकता। लेकिन मेरी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि आप जब उसको इस्तेमाल करते हैं, उसको आप अपनी ज़िंदगी में ढालें, आप उसको देखें कि वासुदेव कुटुंब का माने क्या है, उसको जिया कैसे जाता है। उसके लिए मैं चाहूँगा कि मैं, क्योंकि मैंने भगत सिंह पर बहुत काम किया है पिछले कुछ सालों से, और मेरा अपना लगाव भगत सिंह के विचारों से, और एक क्रांतिकारी विचारक के रूप में, कोई ऐसा व्यक्ति नहीं जिसने बंदूक चला के कुछ लोगों को मार दिया, वो भगत सिंह नहीं है मेरे लिए। अब वो भगत सिंह है भी नहीं, भगत सिंह है रेवोल्यूशनरी थिंकर, क्रांतिकारी विचारक। वो विचार क्या हैं उनमें, क्योंकि आज भगत सिंह पर मुझे बात नहीं करनी है, मैं सिर्फ वासुदेव कुटुंबकम के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात करना चाहता हूँ। 1924 में जब भगत सिंह की उम्र 17 साल थी, उस वक्त भगत सिंह ने एक आर्टिकल लिखा हिंदी में, कलकत्ता से एक मैगजीन निकलता था मतवाला, वो 2 पार्ट में छपा। उसका विषय क्या था? विषय उस ऐसे का, निबंध का था, विश्व बंधुता, ब्रदरहुड, वर्ल्ड ब्रदरहुड। अब क्योंकि वो एक लंबा सा आर्टिकल, तो मैं 2-3 बात सिर्फ आपको बताऊंगा आज के इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, वासुदेव कुटुंबकम का माने क्या है। उसमें भगत सिंह लिखते हैं, और वासुदेव कुटुंबकम से ही शुरू करते हैं लिखने के बाद, कि ये हमारी ऐतिहासिक धरोहर है, ये हम सुनते आए हैं, लेकिन इसका मतलब क्या है? इसको हम आज कॉलोनाइज्ड हिंदुस्तान में उसकी मीनिंग हम कैसे समझ सकते हैं? और वो कहते हैं मेरे लिए वासुदेव कुटुंबकम का मतलब ये है कि जहाँ कोई भी अजनबी ना हो, जहाँ कोई भी अदर ना हो, जहाँ कोई भी स्ट्रेंजर ना हो। और आज हम अपने मुल्क में, हम रोज अपने मुल्क में ही, अपने सिटीजन्स में ही स्ट्रेंजर्स ढूंढते हैं ना? तो अगर आप ब्रदरहुड की बात करते हैं तो पहले तो मुल्क में ब्रदरहुड होना चाहिए। दुनिया को एक साथ मिलाना तो एक दूसरा सवाल है। पहले आप जाति, धर्म, लैंग्वेज, इन सब से ऊपर उठ के, जो अभी रंजीत साहब कह रहे थे, इनसे ऊपर उठ के आप हिंदुस्तानी को ढूंढें, सबको एक बनाने की कोशिश करें, धर्म और जाति से ऊपर उठकर, तब वासुदेव कुटुंबकम का कुछ माने निकलता है। तो ये एक स्लोगन नहीं है मेरे लिए, ये एक लिविंग, एक जिंदगी है, एक जिंदा आइडियल है, और उसको तभी जिंदा रखा जा सकता है जब उसको हम अपनी ज़िंदगी में उतारें। और मैं ये हर हमारे जो विचारक हैं, चाहे वो भगत सिंह हो, चाहे मौलाना आज़ाद हो, और पटेल हो, नेहरू हो, जो भी हैं, उन सब के बारे में मैं यही कहता हूँ कि ये लोग, मैं मुर्दा इतिहास में बिलीव नहीं करता। वो इतिहास जो जिंदा नहीं होता है उसका कोई फ़ायदा नहीं। इतिहास वही काम का है जिसको आप अपनी ज़िंदगी में, भगत सिंह के विचारों को अपनी ज़िंदगी में उतारें, उसको जिएं। अंग्रेज़ों ने भगत सिंह को एक बार मारा, हम भगत सिंह को रोज़ मारते हैं क्योंकि हम भगत सिंह की नहीं मानते। तो वो हम सबके साथ करते हैं। अब वो भगत सिंह अकेले नहीं है, सुभाष चंद्र बोस के साथ भी करते हैं, आज़ाद के साथ भी कर रहे हैं, गांधी के साथ भी कर रहे हैं। तो बहुत से सबक सीखने हैं हमें इन लोगों से। और ये वासुदेव कुटुंबकम तो अपनी जगह ठीक है, बड़ा अच्छा लगता है सुनने में, लेकिन उसको जो मुश्किल काम वो है जब आप उसको जिए ज़िंदगी में, लोगों को ये बताएं कि उसके मानी क्या है, उसके आधार पर ज़िंदगी कैसी जी जाती है, तब उसका कोई मतलब निकलता है।
मेरे लिए खुशनसीबी भी है और दुविधा भी है कि एक तरफ हमारे साथ एक इतिहासकार, हिस्टोरियन है, और दूसरी तरफ एक डिप्लोमेट है जो हर मामले में इन सवालों का जवाब देने के लिए मुझसे बेहतर तरीके से कह सकते हैं। लेकिन जो आपने प्रश्न पूछा है वो महत्वपूर्ण इसलिए है क्योंकि बहुत सारी ऐसी बातें मन में आती हैं। तो देखिए, भारत हमेशा से, जो गांधी जी ने शुरुआती दौर में भी कहा था कि I want various cultures to come and assimilate, but I don't want them to be blown by them. तो हमारी एक ये आइडेंटिटी है आज पूरी दुनिया में। हमारे डिप्लोमेट साहब कितनी जगह के राजदूत रह गए, इन्होंने देखा होगा कि हिंदुस्तान की बात, छाप जो है वो सब जगह, किसी भी देश में आप वेस्ट एशिया जाएं, आप अफ्रीका जाएं, आप अमेरिका जाएं, किसी भी कॉन्टिनेंट में जाएं, किसी महाद्वीप में जाएं, आपको इंडिया के बारे में लोगों में एक जिज्ञासा होती है, उत्सुकता होती है, और हिंदुस्तान की एक इज्जत होती है। इवन जो लेबर क्लास हमारा जाता है, उस लेबर क्लास की भी, चाहे वो सिंगापुर हो, दुबई हो, तमाम जगह हो, उसकी इज्जत है। उनको एक मेहनतकश, एक अच्छे और ईमानदार लोगों के बारे में माना जाता है। हमारी जो पॉलिटिकल थॉट है, जिसका मैंने इस बुक में भी बहुत जिक्र किया है, किताब और लिखी मैंने, भारत के प्रधानमंत्री, उसका जिक्र किया। देखिए, जब कारगिल का जो एक युद्ध तो बाद में हुआ, जो दुस्साहस किया था पाकिस्तान ने, तो उसके बाद में क्या हुआ कि उस ज़माने में क्लिंटन यूएस के प्रेसिडेंट थे, और उन्होंने, क्योंकि दोनों न्यूक्लियर कंट्रीज़ के बीच में विवाद हो रहा था, तो उन्होंने नवाज़ शरीफ को बुला लिया, और नवाज़ शरीफ पाकिस्तान के जो राष्ट्रपति प्रधानमंत्री थे वो चले भी गए। अटल जी ने वहाँ जाने से मना कर दिया, क्योंकि उन्होंने कहा मैं क्यों जाऊँ, ये लोग हमारे यहाँ घुसपैठिए हैं, हमें आके कर रहे हैं, और अमेरिका कौन होता है इस बात को डिसाइड करने के लिए। तो ये एक उनकी एक जो ताकत थी वो पूरी दुनिया ने देखा। भारत ने, ठीक है, बहुत से देशों को कॉलोनाइज नहीं किया है, चढ़ाई नहीं की है, लेकिन भारत का अपनी ताकत जो है वो अपने उसके ऊपर रहती है। तो अटल जी उस समय नहीं गए। एक और मुझे बड़ा एक दिलचस्प वाक़या था, आप लोग युवा लोग हो तो होगा, कई बार ऐसा भी कहा जाता है कि हमारे यहाँ जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हुए 14 प्रधानमंत्री, तो प्रधानमंत्री वीक थे, कमज़ोर थे। लेकिन मैं आपको बता सकता हूँ, एक जानकार और जिसने कोशिश की कि भारत के प्रधानमंत्री नाम की किताब भी लिखी, कोई प्रधानमंत्री कमज़ोर नहीं था, किसी को कम समय मिला, किसी को ज़्यादा समय मिला, लेकिन नीति सबकी, नीति सबकी अच्छी थी। इंद्र कुमार गुजराल नाम के एक प्रधानमंत्री हुए होंगे, आपने उसका नाम सुना होगा। तो एक उसका बड़ा दिलचस्प किस्सा था, तो मुझे लगा कि मैं आपसे वो शेयर करूं। बताता है कि भारत को लेके कितना आत्मसम्मान हमें कूट के सा हुआ है। तो इंदिरा गांधी देश की प्रधानमंत्री थी, गुजराल जी विदेश मंत्री थे, और सर वो ब्रेजनेव जो थे वो यूएसएसआर जो रूस है उसके राष्ट्रपति थे। तो वो इंदिरा गांधी उनके साथ मिलने गई मॉस्को में, और गुजराल साहब विदेश मंत्री के रूप में थे। इंदिरा गांधी ने नोटिस किया कि ब्रेजनेव की जो बहुत बड़े एक विश्व के नेता थे, बार बार उनकी नज़र जो थी गुजराल साहब की घड़ी के ऊपर थी, और वो घड़ी बार बार देख रहे थे। तो इंदिरा गांधी ने फिर धीरे से उनसे हिंदी में कहा कि अरे ये देखो घड़ी, इनको घड़ी तुम पेश कर दो। गुजराल जी ने वो इग्नोर कर दिया। एक बार और इंदिरा गांधी ने कहा, जब मीटिंग ख़त्म हो गई तो बाहर निकले, तब इंदिरा जी ने उनको खुल के किया कि अरे इंद्र कुमार, मैं तुमसे कह रही थी, इनको घड़ी पसंद आ रही थी, दे दो। तो उनका जवाब सुनिए गुजराल से। गुजराल साहब ने कहा कि देखिए, मैं यहाँ भारत देश का विदेश मंत्री हूँ, मैं ऐसे को अपनी घड़ी उतार के उनको नहीं पेश कर सकता। बाद में उन्होंने, गुजराल साहब ने, HMT की जो हिंदुस्तान मशीन टूल्स नाम की एक बड़ी मशहूर कंपनी थी, और अभी भी है, और उसकी बहुत घड़ियाँ विश्व में बड़ी मशहूर थी। आप जो कंट्रीज़ में रहे वहाँ उनकी बड़ी डिमांड होती थी। 5 घड़ियों का सेट जाके उन्होंने फिर राष्ट्रपति को भेंट किया, लेकिन उस समय वो घड़ी उतार के नहीं थी। तो इस तरह की छोटी छोटी घटनाएं जो बताती हैं कि आज देश में जो भारत, विदेश में पूरा विश्व जो है भारत को देख रहा है एक विश्व गुरु की नीयत से या अच्छी निगाहों से, उसकी वजह ये है कि हमारे लोग जो हमारे देश के जो सर्वोच्च पदों पर रहे हैं, उन्होंने भारत को एक इज्जत दी और एक आत्मसम्मान। वो सिर्फ उसमें एक जवाहरलाल नेहरू, इंदिरा गांधी से लेकर वो सिलसिला चला रहा है, पूरे 14 प्रधानमंत्रियों ने उसका निर्वाह किया है।
It's about, on the one hand, we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and on the other hand is nationalism. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is that the world is a family, हम लोग सब एक हैं, और nationalism कुछ लोगों का इंटरप्रिटेशन होता है कि जैसे अमेरिका फर्स्ट या हमारी कंट्री बेस्ट है, बाकी सब खराब है। सो थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन आ जाता है। और मैं एक चीज़ और कहना चाहता हूँ कि हमारी संस्कृति में एक और थिंकिंग है, एंड दैट इज एकम सत विप्रा बहुधा वदंती। देयर इज वन ट्रूथ एंड द लर्नेड men, the knowledgeable people, the wise people describe it in different ways. So it's like saying, all rivers really lead into the ocean. So if the whole world is a family, you have to live together. And I think this is really critical today. If you look at climate change, not even the most powerful country on earth, which is maybe the United States, they cannot handle climate change on their own. Unless the world cooperates, you cannot reduce greenhouse gases and carbon emissions. So the world has to cooperate. So I think Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in the contemporary context really means we have to all work together. And you work together only when you have respect for each other. You can't say, oh, I'm much better than you, you're nothing, I'm everything. That kind of approach will not work. It doesn't work domestically, it doesn't work internationally. So you have to use your power of logic, reason, negotiation, persuasion. And I think that's what's important. Even in a family, how do you keep your एक परिवार को आप इकट्ठा कैसे रखते हो? उसमें 2-3 बच्चे हैं, मदर हैं, फादर हैं, डिफरेंसेस भी होते हैं, बातचीत करके, एक दूसरे को अंडरस्टैंड करके, ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग बढ़ा के, you reach some common ground. So this is what you do in diplomacy at the international level, and I think this is what we have to do in G20. आपने जिक्र किया G20 होने वाला है, तो दुनिया भर की जो मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, these countries have to, हर कंट्री का अलग अलग दृष्टिकोण है, तो how will you arrive at some common understanding? So I think that is the challenge, and this challenge can only be met if you have this philosophy that the world is one family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam.
Thank you, sir. Though our country may be divided into different states, it is said our language brings us all together. This brings to my next question. So, however, the idea of linguistic politics and language imposition has become a predominant argument in post-colonial India, be it the Hindu versus Urdu movement, the Dravidian movement from the Tamil-speaking populace, or the blatant exclusion of the Northeast. What are your thoughts on the same, sir?
I think it is, the question is linked to what we have been talking about in response to your earlier questions, because language again is used as a political tool, and it is as divisive if we use it that way as religion, as caste, or as anything else. So language can be used as a divisive tool, which some of us have done it in the past. Urdu is a language which is facing a different sort of problem, because any language which has to survive can survive only when it is linked to employment, when it is linked to vocation. अगर वो आपकी ज़िंदगी में कहीं काम नहीं आ रही है ज़बान, वो ज़बान खुद ही मर जाएगी. अब वो उसको ज़िंदा रखने के लिए कुछ कदरदान हैं जो उसको ज़िंदा रख सकते हैं. तो वो एक इशू हो सकता है. आई लव उर्दू पोइट्री, आई लव उर्दू प्रोज, तो ठीक है, मैं उसको इस्तेमाल करूँगा, लेकिन आम तौर से उसको ज़िंदा रखना मुश्किल है, क्योंकि वो कहीं किसी काम की नहीं है ना. मेरे लिए इशू ये नहीं है, ये तो एक ऐसा इशू है जिस पर बहुत सारी बात की जा सकती है और कर सकते हैं और करते भी हैं. मेरे लिए इशू ये है कि ज़बान के साथ हम क्या कर रहे हैं, ज़बान की को इस्तेमाल हम कैसे करते हैं, कैसे लिखते हैं, कैसे बोलते हैं, और उसमें हम लोगों ने बहुत चूक की है. मैं कुछ ज़बानों के बारे में जानता हूँ, बाकी हिंदुस्तान की इतनी सारी लैंग्वेजेस हमारे मुल्क में हैं, उनके साथ क्या हो रहा है ये मुझे मालूम नहीं, लेकिन हिंदी, उर्दू, अंग्रेज़ी और पंजाबी, इन सब लैंग्वेजेस के साथ हमने बहुत ज़्यादती की है, क्योंकि हम उनको ना सही बोलते हैं ना सही लिखते हैं. हिंदी में मात्राएं गलत लिखते हैं. तो आप ये सोचो कि लैंग्वेज की बात छोड़ो, आप जो लैंग्वेज लिखते हो उसको कैसे लिखते हो ना, उसको ज़िंदा रखना भी है तो किस फॉर्म में ज़िंदा रखना है. तो प्योरिटी की बात नहीं मैं कर रहा हूँ, वो तो आपने जहाँ मात्रा छोटी की लगनी है आपने बड़ी की लगा दिया, आपको ये पता नहीं कि लैंग्वेज को, उस वर्ड को लिखना कैसे है. तो ये बहुत कुछ हम बहुत सी लैंग्वेजेस के साथ कर रहे हैं. तो मेरा जहाँ तक एक डिवाइसिव टूल की तरह से इस्तेमाल होता है वो तो अपनी जगह सवाल है ही. और जैसे अभी रशीद कह रहे थे कि तमिल लैंग्वेज का जो हमारा साउथ का इशू है, एंटी हिंदी जो एक एटीट्यूड रहा है 1960s से हम देखते आ रहे हैं, वो सिर्फ तमिलनाडु में है, साउथ में. केरला में आपको नहीं मिलेगा वो सेंटिमेंट, आंध्रा में भी नहीं होगा, कर्नाटक में भी नहीं है. तमिल में एक ये हिस्टोरिकल रीज़न है, वहाँ ये सेंटिमेंट है, वो आज भी है. तो मैं बिल्कुल इसमें मुझे कोई शक नहीं है. आज भी अगर आप कोशिश करेंगे, अभी हुई थी कुछ दिन पहले, तो कैसे रिएक्शन तमिलनाडु में हुआ, साउथ की किसी जगह नहीं हुआ, तमिलनाडु में हुआ. तो वो एक इशू है. तो वो एक बड़ा ऐसी चीज़ है जिसमें मुझे नहीं लगता है कि कोई बहुत सीरियस कंसर्न है हमारा, उसमें कोई मुद्दा नहीं है. वो हिस्टोरिकल रीज़न है, वो ठीक है, वी कैन लिव विद इट. उसको हम अगर प्रिक करेंगे तो उससे हमें नुकसान होगा, उसमें हमें छेड़छाड़ नहीं करनी चाहिए.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, please.
I think it's a very debatable thing that you are saying, whether India is a one country or union of states. I think the answer is it's a mix of both. You cannot take just one proposition, because we have a lot of diversity. There are people who have a very strong ethnic, linguistic, regional identity and aspirations, and that is why you look at the Indian Constitution. The framers of Constitution were very careful in having a kind of Indian Constitution which is unitary in character and federal in practice. So all these things are there, but we must also remember, because many of you are, I can see they are very young, between the age group of 18 to 21, around that age. You must understand that India actually inherited a very, very, under very difficult circumstances. It was not only partition, but it was also exit of our colonial power, which has really destroyed a lot of things. It was all the institutions, including bureaucracy, were in the order of exploitative nature, etc. So what we did was we acted as per requirement, piecemeal. You may be aware there is a neighboring state of Madhya Pradesh. Now, how Madhya Pradesh was created? When this first reorganization of a state commission was announced by Justice Fazal Ali, so they had many linguistic states. Gujarat was created, Maharashtra was created, all the states came in being, और जो बीच का हिस्सा बच गया उसको उन्हें कोई समझ में नहीं आया, तो उसका नाम रख दिया मध्य प्रदेश. So then they had to create Chhattisgarh later on. Even today there is a very legitimate demand for whether it is Gorkhaland and several other places. We have not done any scientific or any exercise to bring about that kind of the creation of states, newer states. There is an urgent need for second reorganization of states commission, like it was done in 1956. So many years have passed, because the idea of linguistic states was, Punjab was created, several other were created because somebody sat on a fast unto death. मतलब धरने पे बैठ गया, crisis हो गई, मास्टर तारा सिंह बैठ गए, कोई और बैठ गए, उसमें political exigencies prompted the establishment to create these states. Uttarakhand was created, Chhattisgarh was created, but a scientific exercise as per our resources. Because what is the point of having this planning commission, Niti Aayog and all? There are very unwieldy states. You look at Uttar Pradesh, it is so big. There are only 6 countries in the world which have a bigger population than Uttar Pradesh. 6 countries out of 189 countries. So Uttar Pradesh that way is the 7th biggest country in the world. You may find it scandalous, but that is what it is. So therefore we need to see, now we have all those technology and internet and everything is there, and we have very strong political leadership which can take a decision. And on a parameter of 10 or 12, you can decide, which part to go to where, what is the kind of industry, raw material, all kind of resources, and there should be a judicious exercise. And therefore, then only we will become very strong. Otherwise, you will look at the northeast. What we are seeing in Manipur. I don't want to just go on, and I don't want to, of course, criticize anybody. But all the northeastern states have a territorial issue, linguistic issue, reservation. आपको ये भी जान के हैरत होगी कि reservation का basis के ऊपर भी there is no scientific basis. One can understand there is a reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe because there is a historical wrong, एक injustice हुआ था. But others, they don't deserve, in a way they don't deserve it. But there is a demand and there is no basis of it. So most time this, if you go in the deep into this, wherever reservations are granted, they are granted on political grounds, not on solid, socioeconomic indicators. So we claim to be very modern and very progressive and all, but we are very status quoist. I'm sorry, I'm making a little critical remark to young minds, but we must also know the reality of the country. Thank you.
See, the way I look at it, this is our heritage. ये जो भाषाएं हमारे देश में, इतनी अनेक भाषाएं, इतनी डायलेक्ट्स हैं, ये हमारी धरोहर है. We have to preserve it, we have to protect it, we have to nurture it. Every language is linked to people, to communities, to literature, to history, to identity. This is the greatness of India. We are not like China with just one language in the whole country. We have this diversity, and as I said earlier, we must ensure that this diversity thrives. So it's an aspect of everybody's identity. And language has been a very big political issue. जो हमारी initially जब constitution adopt हुआ था तो उसमें states formation on a linguistic basis नहीं था. फिर जब ये demand आई तो 1954 में ये States Reorganization Commission का report वगैरह आया, then the states of India were carved on a linguistic basis. And I think this was, at that time the right thing to do. Because what does this mean? This means you can be proud in your regional identity. I'm from Uttar Pradesh. I can be a proud person from UP, proud of my culture, my language, my history. But at the same time, you can be a proud Indian. So there is no contradiction between being a proud Gujarati and a proud Indian, or a proud Telugu speaking person and a proud Indian. So this is the beauty of the country. So it is our democracy and the system that we have adopted which has provided this cushion that you can have very strong regional identities and at the same time you can have a very strong national identity. So I think, this is the beauty of this democracy that we have, and all differences that arise are resolved on the basis of dialogue and compromise. Now, of course, if one region wants to impose a language on the rest of the country, if the rest of the country is prepared to accept it, fine, there's no problem. Like in the United States, for instance, English is the main language. But there are so many other languages. People from so many countries have come, Italian Americans, Indian Americans, Latin Americans. They all have their own languages, but they have English. So everybody accepts it. हमारे देश में language has been historically, जैसे आपने बताया, has been a controversial issue. So Hindi by some people is seen as the language of the North. So there are historical reasons for it. I'm sure a day will come when we can also have same language spoken everywhere and our regional languages also. But what I'm saying is this is a process. It's a work in progress. You cannot impose something on somebody against their will. So we should look at the beauty of our languages, the literature, have translation. So I can also read in translation the beauty of Gujarati literature, for instance, or Tamil literature, which I may not have access to otherwise. So I don't think we should focus on language as a divisive issue. We should focus on language as a very precious heritage that we have in our country and which needs to be protected and nurtured.
Thank you, sir. Very well stated. If someone asks me who are you, what's your identity, I'll proudly say I'm Shravanti and India is my identity. Coming to the next question, in all of your opinion, why is India a union or amalgam of states in contrast to a civilized state? The idea of our civilization dates to about 5000 BC and has deep-rooted culture and cultural connections to our modern day life as well. What are your thoughts on the same? What is India if not for its history?
You see, this question has been raised by some people recently, that India is a civilizational state. I think I find it very problematic. When you say that India is a union of states, that is a fact which was referred to by Rasheed Sahab also just now. And we know how India was created. It's a federal state. States have their own autonomies, etc. And we have tried to put together in India where we keep our identities and we still remain in India. Civilizational state means what? No? Because we are so diverse. Which civilization, whose civilization, which civilization language? With civilization will come lots of other questions. Civilization includes religion, other practices, languages. So that will cause huge problems. And when we formed this new India after independence, we tried to escape all these controversial issues and tried to create an India where divisive issues are are put aside, and we remain one despite our diversity. So that was the idea. Now some people start talking about this, as you have raised this issue, then you are going to cause trouble, because our diversity is going to be again, we'll have again a question mark. No? Whose civilization and what civilization? No? Like 5000 BC means what? Well, I mean, this 5000 BC, lots of things have happened over the centuries. Lots of cultures, religions, people have come to India, have gone out of India. No? And they came here with their own baggage, with their own religions, practices, cultural practices, dress, food, all sorts of things. And all that together adds color to our life. I find India much more beautiful than so many other countries, because we are so diverse. We are so plural. That is our strength. That is our beauty. So we need to create an India जहाँ पर इस तरह के इश्यूज पैदा ना हो. अगर हम खुद अपने पैर पर कुल्हाड़ी मारें, ऐसा इशू पैदा करें जो हमें बांटे, तो वो तो हमारी अपनी गलती है. अपने मुल्क को, जिसको हम एक रखना चाहते हैं और एक रखा है पिछले 75 साल में, उसको हमें मजबूत करना चाहिए. ये कमज़ोर करने वाले इश्यूज उठाने का कोई मतलब नहीं होता.
I think in principle one would entirely agree what you are saying, and every country, nation, civilization needs to be very proud of its past as well as present. So there are no dispute about the formulation. As Dr. Irfan Habib Sahab was saying, you see, the problem and trouble starts when it is pitted one against another, that my civilizational values are better than yours, or yours is mine. So then it leads to some kind of disquiet and contention, as we have also seen. But we must understand, I see that there is a faculty of liberal arts is also involved with this, so there will be many students who are studying liberal arts. In any case, even if you don't read liberal arts, you would know that every country, every nation, every civilization goes through many highs and lows. So there are areas and events and individuals that we take a lot of pride. There are things that are difficult. For instance, we were indeed colonized by the British, so you cannot ignore it. If you say that the British never came here, or they were never a ruling class, then it is like putting, having a kind of blind vision, or not being reasonable or so. So we must understand that every nation, every civilization goes through this kind of cycle, and if we are a believer, then this is all act of God, is also involvement is there. But as we are today, we cannot be judging or ruining our present and future just looking at the past, and this is area of interest. And I think I find fault at a very theoretical level of both sides, those who are asserting, trying to project a particular culture as their own and otherize, and those who feel that they are otherized. The changing names of cities, etc., is a very cosmetic exercise. It doesn't change anything. And more so, if you look at from a historian's point of view, if a city or a locality's name is changed, what if somebody after 100 years or so does some kind of research? Now that particular village or town or locality will not be available. It will not be there on the net also. So we are losing a lot of heritage and that kind of those values. So therefore, this civilizational debate is very good. But at the same time, my young friends, we must understand we should not draw comfort in that. कि हमारे बाप दादा ने घी खाया था, हमारी हथेली सूंघ लो. मतलब you are going to be judged by what you do. Today world is looking at us at if you go to Silicon Valley or wherever, how much of this thing, what kind of trillion economy we have, the kind of engineers, doctors we are producing, the kind of skill we have, all these things we are known for that. There is no point browbeating into what happened. And lot of, again, I will just give you a small example, though it's a little controversial, but please bear with me. See, it is often said that so to say the Muslims were voted for a political party that led to the partition or something like that. partition of India, that being Muslim League. There is nothing that can be more untrue than this, because we must also remember that when the first elections took place in 37, the women did not have a right to vote. So that means 50% of population didn't have a right. The other 50% male also, there were certain conditions were there, that you had to be an income taxpayer, you need to be a landed aristocrat, you need to be a graduate. There were certain conditions, 12, 13 conditions were there. Point I'm saying, out of that 100% population, 86% people did not have a right to vote. Just try to stomach that. 86% of Indians did not have, 50% of women and 50% of people who are, farmers, laborers, daily wage earners, all those people who were not either landholders or income taxpayers or graduates or all those things. Now imagine in any election or any this thing, if 84% or 86% people were not involved, what kind of will was it? So, but these are the things that are not talked about. This is there, it's well documented. Therefore, I am saying we should always, have an informed choice, and that's where literary festival and books become important, because they not only tell you what to think about. Thank you.
Civilization is a very dynamic concept. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक गोल्डन एज थी और दैट वाज द बेस्ट, उसके बाद सब गड़बड़ हुआ है. इट इज़ एन इटरेटिव प्रोसेस. सिविलाइजेशन, कल्चर इंटरैक्ट्स, रिएक्ट्स, चेंजेस, अडैप्ट्स, डेवलप्स, इवॉल्व्स. सो इट्स अ वेरी डायनामिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट. जो हम कहते हैं कि भारत की बहुत प्राचीन सभ्यता है, इट्स अ वेरी एंशिएंट सोसाइटी, देयर इज नो डाउट अबाउट इट. But when you say what is Indian culture, it is something that has arisen in the deep past and evolved over the centuries to become what it is today. So it's not a static concept. We have given to others, we have also benefited from others. I mean, look at Gujarat, for instance. Gujarat, the coast of Gujarat was trading with ancient Rome and Greece and Africa and Arabia. So there's so much interaction. So there's been a give and take. If you see the Silk Road, which went from Xi'an in China all the way to Istanbul or Constantinople, and there were spurs of the Silk Road through India. Apart from goods and products and so on, there was a lot of exchange of ideas, of religious traditions, of philosophies. That is the way the concept of zero traveled from India to the Persian-speaking countries, and then from there on to Europe and so on. So this is a process where, it's not static. You are constantly learning. I mean, today, for instance, take IT, information technology. The advances are happening because of a collaborative effort the world over. Global research, for instance, no one country can say, this is my concept of what I have developed. Look at your iPhone. The parts of the iPhone are manufactured in so many different countries. So what I'm trying to say is that, there's no point saying that we are, you cannot have a standalone culture which is independent of everything around it. It's a very interactive process, it's a dynamic process, and it evolves. And I think that is the beauty of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam also. That we learn from each other, we benefit from the shared experiences that we have, we take what is good, reject what is bad, and that is how society progresses. And finally, what is Indian civilization? I think it's the people of India. That is our civilization. They embody Indian civilization. And if they do well, they are prosperous, progressive, contributing to the global good, then that is Indian civilization.
Thank you so much, sir. Irfan sir, your biography of Maulana Azad presents the story of his life, his principles and beliefs. What was your intent behind authoring his biography, and how was the experience? Can you tell a little about Azad's interpretation of nationalism and how was it different from others? What is your opinion?
Actually, the whole idea behind doing this book was, first of all, it was a very practical thing because there was no good, decent biography which could talk about Maulana's contributions, diverse contributions as an individual, as a scholar, as a nationalist, as a freedom fighter. The last good book came out in 1990. Even that was very limited. So that was the idea. Now, while I was doing it, I could realize that Maulana is a much maligned person in this India today. No, I found lots of video programs which deride him, which actually undermine his contribution, which call him names. Some of them are abusive. No, this is something sad. So I felt really very concerned that how can somebody like him, who dedicated all his life to the cause of Indian freedom, along with Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Azad. These are the names which we take, 4 names. There were so many others, but these 4 names come to mind immediately when you talk of freedom fighters. And now he faces something like this. So that brought me to the subject to make an attempt to find what real Azad was and what is his standing in our freedom struggle. Coming to nationalism, he is one person who remained committed to united India till the end. Everybody considered, from Gandhi, Patel, Azad, Nehru and everybody else. He was the only one who remained committed to united India. And he had his own arguments why he believed in united India. While doing it, you just heard about Hussain Ahmad Madni. Maulana Azad was very closely involved with Darul Uloom Deoband and the Jamaat Ulama because they took a position against Muslim League, tried to convince Indians, because Jamaat Ulama and Darul Uloom had a huge influence in areas which we call Western Uttar Pradesh today, and parts of Rajasthan, parts of other parts of India, North India, where Darul Uloom had an influence. Even today, it continues to have that influence. In those times, when Western UP was next to Punjab, like Haryana was Punjab at that time, and most of the violence and impact of partition took place in those parts. Now today, if you go by demography, the Muslim population in UP is about 18 to 19%. Western UP has 26%. And I have tried to raise this issue further in the book also, that despite the huge threats of violence, large number of people stayed away from Muslim League. Why? We hear a lot these days about Pasmanda Muslims. Large number of these Muslims who are not Ashraf, who are not Sayyid, Sheikh, Pathan, most of them, or who were not landlords, or who were not in businesses or rich people, all those were part of Muslim League. But this section of Muslims stayed away from Muslim League in large numbers because they didn't see any future in a country which they didn't know what their country is about. They had nothing to lose here. They had hardly anything. They were artisans. They were poor workers. So they stayed. So I tried to talk to lots of people in a place where I come from, Meerut, Muzaffarnagar, that region of Western UP. Lots of Ansari families who belong to the weaving community, who are in large numbers. And there are many friends of mine in there from that community, and I asked them. They said they have nobody from their family in Pakistan. They never felt the need of actually visiting Pakistan because there is nobody. So their family were never divided. They didn't go. So that's why a huge section of our population is stayed away. Why? Because Maulana Azad and Darul Uloom, Jamaat Ulama, All India Movement Conference, lots of other platforms which were against Muslim League and against the idea of partition in the name of religion, stayed with Maulana Azad. Muhammad Ali Jinnah tried to identify Maulana Azad as a showboy of the Congress, as an agent of the Hindus. These are the words he has used for him. Maulana Azad never reacted to any of it. There is no record that he ever reacted to Jinnah's abusive language or undermining of him. Jinnah did it consciously because he wanted to prove that it is only Maulana Azad who is with the Congress. Rest of the Muslims are with us. So we are the sole spokesperson, or he is the sole spokesperson of the Muslims, which was not true. There were, and in this book I have tried to raise in the chapter on nationalism, and we do not know much about him. Allah Baksh Samru was a leader of Sindh who was against Muslim League, against Muhammad Ali Jinnah, against partition, and was with Maulana Azad all through. In 1940, when Muslim League passed a resolution on the basis of two-nation theory, and Maulana Azad addressed Ramgarh session of the Congress as president in 1940. In the same year, just after a month in April, All India Azad Muslim Conference was organized in Delhi. There are various records in the archives, in the files, in the archives in Delhi, which says that 75,000 to 1 lakh Muslims participated in that conference. That conference was organized to challenge Muslim League and Muslim League's idea of two-nation theory, idea of Pakistan. So I believe, which I have tried to prove here in this book, that Maulana Azad did not lose. He actually won because he convinced a large number of people to stay back in India, decide to believe that India is their home. So for him, it was not a loss. So he actually was one person who convinced a large number of people to stay back and call India their home. So that is a major contribution of somebody like Maulana Azad, and I admire him for his tenacity and courage to stand alone for the cause of India's freedom.
Irfan sir, over the years you must have come across various social and cultural accounts from history. Which would be the event in history that, according to you, symbolizes India and its diversity the best?
Actually, this is not a very a question which can be answered in just one event or one episode in our history, because our history is thousands of years old. So I don't think I can just identify one. But if I want to do, obviously I'm not a historian of medieval or ancient India. I have done my modern Indian history and freedom struggle phase and history of science. During my period, what I find most fascinating, and which actually I keep talking and which I referred to a few minutes back as well. For me, a leader, a thinker like Bhagat Singh stands tall and high above so many others. Unfortunately, he is the one person who is misunderstood, who is not even read by people. People don't even care what he wrote, what he thought, what was his idea of India, how he looked at diversity. No? When I will just refer to one piece of his, which is a seminal essay he wrote, Why am I an atheist? Main nastik kyun hu? And he wrote that just few months before he was hanged in 1930. And that was smuggled out of prison, was delivered to his father, Sardar Kishan Singh, and he gave it to Lala Lajpat Rai, and it was published in The People. The People was a paper which Lajpat Rai used to bring out. So it was published, it became public. Now, that piece of essay is not just against, it's not a denial of God alone, which it is. The title itself says. But he is talking about the diversity of India, how we need to respect Indians coming from different religions and different languages. He talks about rationality. He talks about scientific temper. He talks about gender justice. He talks about large number of things which are relevant even now. And when I say this, I feel sad that people like Bhagat Singh are relevant even now. They shouldn't have been relevant. We should have tackled most of the problems they raised in those times. But unfortunately, we didn't do much. We did a lot, but a lot it still need to be done. And he talks about caste. He talks about all sorts of issues which are pertinent in our lives even now. So for me, he is one person who is for me he's a role model, who should be a role model for most of our young people. Not as a somebody who indulged in violence. No, he just killed Saunders, and he regretted that he did that along with Chandrasekhar Azad. No? And second was his dropping of the bomb in the assembly, which was again not violence against anybody. Nobody killed, nobody injured, nothing. It was an attempt to make the deaf hear, to make the British hear. The cause, against the public safety bill, against people's rights, against workers' rights. That was the issue. So when you talk about history and my idea where we should go, I think we should go to the ideals of Bhagat Singh, and we should try to live what he said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for highlighting such contributions. Ranjit Rae, sir, my question to you is, as you have been the Indian ambassador to Nepal, and in your book Kathmandu Dilemma, Resetting India-Nepal, you mentioned the ties both countries have with each other. Could you please shed some light on the current situation of these ties, especially when it comes to our cultural and ancestral roots?
Yeah, so thank you. And yesterday at dinner I met I think the Vice Chancellor of this university, and he told me that there are 1,000 Nepali students at Parul University. So I was very delighted. And in case some people from Nepal are in this audience, a very special hello to you. It's my favorite country, and I think in my entire career, it was probably the most exciting, most interesting, most challenging assignment. And why is this so? I think it's because, our two countries are so close to each other. We have so many cultural, religious, and other similarities. Nepal's border is with so many of our states, from Uttarakhand to Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Sikkim. And there is an open border. So people from Nepal can travel to India without visas, without passports. Indians can travel to Nepal without visas and passports. So I hope all of you will have the opportunity of visiting Nepal. It's a very beautiful country, very diverse country also. You have the high mountains. 8 of the world's tallest peaks are in Nepal. So those of you who are interested in trekking or mountain climbing, and that is the place. So it's a very, very beautiful country. But sometimes, because we are so close, because India is so large and Nepal is so small. Nepal has 3 crore people. India has 140 crores. Nepal is bounded by India on 3 sides. In the north, they have the Himalayas. So sometimes Nepal feels overwhelmed by India. Wherever they look, they see only India. And so they want to, in my book I say it's like a claustrophobic embrace. So sometimes they want to move away a little bit. So I think that psychology one has to understand. And of course the cultural similarities are huge. But you also have to understand the psychology of a small country. This country wants to define its own national identity. what is unique about Nepal that it's an independent country. And so they don't necessarily want to identify with, Indian culture in that sense. For them it's Nepali culture. And so sometimes when we go and, in a very genuine, friendly way, we say, oh, this is the same as us. Everything is the same. So the Nepalese are a bit resentful. So, every country has to have its own national identity, its own myths, its own civilizational identity. So I think India has to be very sensitive. So while, yes, we are very similar. In fact, in Nepal, whenever you have a puja, and, when the gods are established, and, you have to identify your precise location where you're doing the puja. So in that, they actually say, that Nepal is part of this whole concept of Bharat Varsh, Nepal Khande. So, it is very close, but I think this is an aspect of the relationship that perhaps it would be politically more prudent for the Nepalis to identify and assert rather than Indians constantly harping on this. So whenever we say, "Arey Nepal to bilkul Bharat jaisa hi hai," so it's not something that the Nepalese would like. So in fact, one of the reasons for writing the book was this, that Nepal is so close. From New Delhi, it's 1 hour and 15 minutes flight. Borders are open, but we know so little about Nepal. There is such ignorance about Nepal. So at least if India is going to be a Vishwa Guru, we must at least know about our own neighborhood. So many people I've met in Delhi, they've gone to Europe, America, they've traveled all over the world, but they haven't been to Nepal. So I think it's very important for, it's our priority. And I think this is the priority of the government, this government has a neighborhood first policy. So in our overall foreign policy, there's great emphasis on the neighborhood. And one of the reasons I wrote this book is to explain to Indians about Nepal, what kind of country it is, what kind of relationship it has with India. And secondly, to explain to the Nepalese, unlike in India where we are, we don't care. Nepal is a small little country, we don't talk about it. But in Nepal, there's an obsession with India. For Nepal, India is very, very big. So they are constantly analyzing, looking at India, what's happening, how is it going to impact on us. So I wanted to remove some of the cobwebs in the relationship and to explain to the Nepali people why India follows the kind of policy it follows in India. What is the logic of India's approach or India's policy or India's strategy in Nepal. So basically I wrote the book in order to create greater mutual understanding. And of course the cultural dimension is a very important aspect of that.
Thank you, sir. In the case of China, there is OBOR. So do you think India is falling behind on its soft power investments?
I don't think so. I don't think any third country can replace India and Nepal. The kind of relationship we have between India and Nepal, nobody can, even come within, close to that relationship. So I am very confident that the India-Nepal relationship is very robust, very strong. But on the margins, things are changing. The Chinese are active all over the world. The Belt and Road Initiative that you refer to is everywhere in the world. It's also in South Asia. And most of our neighbors, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Nepal, of course, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, everyone is invested in the Belt and Road Initiative. India is the only standout country. We don't like the Belt and Road Initiative. So we have to deal with this situation. So how do we deal? So I don't think you can prevent other countries from being active, but you have to develop a smart policy And I think for India, the smart policy is to look at our subcontinent as a region, an interconnected, interdependent region. So if we can integrate this region economically by developing road connections, railway connections, digital connectivity, oil pipelines, gas pipelines, port connectivity, inland ports, if we can develop joint projects. Nepal is very rich in water resources. Did you know something? When I was researching for my book, 50% of the water flows in the Ganga at Farakka barrage, before the Ganga goes into Bangladesh, come from rivers in Nepal. 50% of the water flows, at the peak in the monsoon season. So you can see how important Nepal is, for India, particularly from this perspective of water. So if Nepal's white gold is water, if that can be harnessed, you generate hydropower. India needs clean green energy. That hydropower is exported to India. Bangladesh needs clean green energy. That hydropower is exported through Indian transmission lines to Bangladesh. Then you are creating this integrated market. You are creating a very strong economic interest in every country of the region, in each other, and in India. And I think that is really the way we have to go forward. So we develop our own smart policies, improve the efficiency with which we implement our projects, and I think then we can be pretty confident that our relationship will become much more robust. And I don't think we then need to be so bothered about what other countries are doing in our neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. Rasheed, sir, in your book, you talk about the issue in Jammu and Kashmir. What do you think could have been done differently?
I think the ambassador and the historian would vouch for it. Ifs and buts. If we had ifs and buts, then a lot of things would have changed. But I think on the matter of Jammu and Kashmir, there are a lot of mistakes were made, mistakes of the past by all concerned. Of course, the British, we can always blame the British. But also, as you see, it's a very subjective thing. And I think when we talk about Kashmir, the moment we mention Kashmir, we tend to become very emotional. Sometimes we become very, politicized also. We look at things in black and white. We don't look at the role that was played by the later years, post-independent India. I'm talking about 1950s by the Americans, and even our own intelligence community. And there was a person called Bholanath Malik, who was the first RAW chief, and how he kind of informed or misinformed. I don't want to take a political judgment, but so a lot of things are there which are not known. Very interestingly, I was reading a book by Mr. Ranjit Rae, and he made a very telling observation. Basically, as I said, you see, the unification of India was done in a very difficult circumstances. And as we know that great son of India, of Gujarat, Sardar Patel, played a very big role in doing that. But what was at one point of time, and this is something, again, as a young mind, I want to share this. And again, I am saying, I am qualifying it, that these things are not written or said from a political position. So Sardar Patel also had very, clarity of thought, and he was very clear in that. So going by, I have written about it. So what Ranjit Rae has written, that at one point of time, Sardar Patel wanted to settle the issue of Junagadh, Hyderabad state, and of Jammu and Kashmir, which was the outstanding issue. The rest of India had united. As you know, we were British India, and there was princely states. Over 550 princely states were there. It was a difficult task. So Sardar Patel sends a Prime Minister who was his friend, our former cabinet colleague, called Liaquat Ali Khan. And that conversation, I found it very interesting, and it tells you about both sides. And you asked me about rather, you're young, but I'm just saying you asked a very potentially loaded question, what could have been done. So that tells us that maybe Sardar Patel communicated to the Pakistani Prime Minister that if we get the entire Hyderabad state, which of course eventually we did get, this was before that, then he was prepared to negotiate Kashmir. So when we talk about Hyderabad state was very big. Parts of Karnataka, parts of Tamil Nadu, all this was there. It was one of the richest state in the world actually. So we were very keen that entire Hyderabad should come to us, and it was a non-negotiable. So imagine in today's context the kind of political climate we live in. If we were to tell somebody that Mr. Sardar Patel wanted to actually do away with Kashmir, कि आप कश्मीर ले लो और हमें हैदराबाद दे दो, हैदराबाद और जूनागढ़, so they will find it little disturbing and maybe unacceptable. उधर देखिए दूसरे पक्ष का क्या जवाब आता है. वो जो उनके कैबिनेट कुलीग थे लियाकत अली खान, this is a documented thing, that is why I am narrating. He says कि आप अरे सरदार साहब से वीपी मेनन had gone, तो he tells वीपी मेनन, अरे आप सरदार साहब से कहिए ये क्या बात कर रहे हैं. हाँ, एक कोहिनूर के सामने हमें कुछ पत्थर के टुकड़े पकड़ा रहे हैं. This कोहिनूर being the Hyderabad state, because it was very rich and big. और पत्थर के टुकड़े कौन है? जम्मू एंड कश्मीर. And who was saying it? A Pakistani prime minister. So I am saying a lot of things have evolved in 1940. Then after that, of course, we know that Jammu and Kashmir got integrated, so was Hyderabad and Junagadh. But then Pakistan attacked in 1948, and what happened at that time, that the Maharaja of Kashmir, that who was Sadr Riyasat, Hari Singh, he delayed. He did not want to immediately sign the papers and be with the rest of India. So there was a delay, and the people were coming. So there was about 48 hours were there, which were very crucial till the time our Air Force reached to Srinagar airport. And the Pakistani army people, they were calling them tribals, whatever, they were about to reach. Now they were held back by the volunteers of that national conference, which was a political thing of, I've written a chapter about it, about that's why I think you are asking this question about Sheikh Abdullah. So Sheikh Abdullah was also very different. What he was in 1948, what he in 1950s was a different person. At that time, Kashmiri youths, and I can say that many of them were Muslims, they fought for India, and they threw away Pakistani army people or tribal people. Like Kargil like incident was there. So, and later on, what we know is that Jammu Kashmir Light Infantry, they called Jack Lights, that was formed to draft actually those youth. So I am saying, there was a time when the entire public opinion was in favor of India after this attack, and years that I'm talking about, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, a lot of things would have different. I think the idea of referendum, plebiscite was bad, because during the partition nobody had got a right to self-determine. Why was this concession given to Kashmir is beyond our understanding, at least people of my generation and younger generation. So I think we should have just taken over full of it and settled it as it was, rather than just allowing this to go on.
Thank you so much for all of your insights, sir. Moving ahead with our next round, which is the rapid fire round, which is going to be full of fun and fire. So the rules are pretty simple. I'll just give you a word, and then whatever comes to your mind first, please tell the same thing. For example, when I say leadership, what comes to your mind first? All of us can take this one after the other.
You have given me a word, heroship.
Leadership, sir.
Heroship, I would say Indira Gandhi.
Ranjit, sir. Irfan, sir. So just one thought, when I say IIMU, and what is the first thought that comes to you, all of you?
I think youth for the future.